Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently exploring the scripture Mysticism of Srimad Bhagavatam. Commentaries by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda ji Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So let's get started on today's satsang. The episode is about the marriage of Pradyumna and Aniruddha, the slaying of Rukmi by Balarama. So, since the time his sister Rukmini had been taken from him by force to become Krishna's wife and his first queen, Rukmi had been simmering with anger towards Krishna. And you will remember we covered this in the previous episode. However, as the years passed, in order only to please Rukmini, Rukmi allowed other material alliances to link his family with Krishna's. When Pradyumna, the son of Krishna and Rukmini, reached marriageable age, he was allowed to marry Rukmavati, the daughter of Rukmi. However, this permission was not granted until Pradyumna, rightfully chosen during a bride's choice ceremony, had already carried Rukmavati away forcibly from her other suitors. Further, when Pradyumna's son Aniruddha grew up, Rukmi permitted his son's daughter Rochna to marry Aniruddha. So there was this animosity initially, but then the families continued to further expand. However, all the while Rukmi continued to wait for the proper opportunity to take revenge upon Krishna. Internally he was mad, angry at Krishna. During the marriage festivities celebrating the union of Aniruddha and Rochna, Rukmi invited Krishna's brother Balarama to a game of dice. During the game, however, Rukmi was deceitful. You will remember the same thing had also happened in the Mahabharata scripture. Each time Balarama staked something, Rukmi falsely claimed to have won the toss. Balarama became annoyed, and a divine voice asserted that Rukmi was not playing fairly. Ignoring the divine voice, Rukmi went on ridiculing Balarama, telling him that since he grew up amidst cowherds, he couldn't possibly understand the royal ways of playing dice with highly cultured and civilized people. So they pushed Balarama to the limit of his anger and patience. So Balarama became angry and smashed Rukmi with his mace. Rukmi had tremendous power and no one but Balarama could have defeated him. With one single movement of his mace, Balarama destroyed Rukmi and then struck all of the people who had laughed at him during the game. Badly injured, all the hecklers fled in a panic from that terrible mace. Krishna then had the bride and groom Rochna and Aniruddha escorted in a magnificent chariot to Dwarka. Dwarka was Krishna's kingdom. In order not to offend Rukmini, because Rukmi was Rukmini's brother. So Krishna did not praise Balarama for his slaying of Rukmi. However, Krishna knew that it was in accord with his divine plan that his arrogant brother-in-law had been destroyed. So, the four aspects of the mental process. Let's understand this in a deeper way from a mystical viewpoint. In Vedanta, the mental process is called Antahakarana, Chatushtaya, and it has four aspects. Antahakarana, inner instruments. These include the Chitta, which is the unconscious, Ahankara, the ego principle, Buddhi, intellect, and Manas. Manas is conscious mind. Krishna represents the Chitta, which is the basic matrix of this mental process. Balarama, Krishna's elder brother, represents the Ahankara or the ego center. Krishna's son Pradyumna represents the Buddhi or the intellect. And Pradyumna's son Aniruddha represents the manas or the mind. These four, Krishna, Balarama, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, are referred to as the divine group of four. And Hindu mystical stories are woven around these four personalities. Chitta, or the unconscious, is that which stores all our positive and negative impressions, all impressions of pleasure and pain, including all impressions of what we have done and what we have experienced, not only in this life, but in many lives, many embodiments we have taken. Without Chitta, the seat of the subtlest experience, there would be no memory. And that is the thought waves that come from the Chitta. Krishna, in this particular context, represents the Chitta aspect. Ahankara, or the ego. The aspect of the mind which represents this is me is called the ahankara or ego element. The sources of ego is the main source is the simple awareness that I am, I exist, it is me, mine. That if you acquire that pure awareness of I am, we will be free of all tension and pressures and pass through a gateway to eternity and to universal awareness. But we never get free of that. It takes sadhana, intense practice to diffuse the I am principle. For most people, however, the awareness of I am is clouded with illusions. I am this body is an illusion. These objects are mine is another illusion. These people are my relatives is a third illusion, and so on. These illusions are called ahamata and mamata, I-ness and mineness, and that is what is the binding principle to the illusion. Awareness of I am is a mighty force represented by Balarama. Balarama, Bal means strength. Balarama is an embodiment of immense power, and his main weapon is the plow with which we till the land. As the ego is purified, a process of reflection enters the unconscious as if Balarama's plow were digging through it, removing all that is negative. Buddhi or intellect. The intellect rationalizes, evaluates, and differentiates between right and wrong. Krishna's son Pradyumna represents that buddhi or intellect aspect of the mental process. Pradyumna is considered an incarnation of the Cupid god, the god of love, and he represents the purified intellect that allows divine love to flow unobstructedly. If one's intellect becomes intuitive, it reveals the beauty and grandeur of divine love and the constraints of worldly love. Manas or mind. Manas is the conscious mind that is constantly in contact with the senses. It is the mind that we are aware of day by day, hour after hour. The conscious mind receives impressions from the five senses. The impressions of everything that we see, hear, smell, touch and taste are all picked up by our conscious mind, which then offers those impressions to the intellect for evaluation. So mind does not make any decisions, it sends it to our intellect aspect. The intellect in turn transmits its evaluation through the mind to the senses. Either it approves or that disapproves the intellect. Pradyumna's son is called Aniruddha, which literally means that which is unobstructed. There is no stoppage. He represents the manas aspect of the mental process in this context. So the marriage of Pradyumna and Rukmavati. Pradyumna represents purified intellect or intellect that allows divine love to flow. Rukmavati represents the luminosity of that intellect. In the course of spiritual evolution, human beings initially face egoistic experiences. Later, when the ego is purified, subtler qualities of the mind begin to manifest. Those qualities that manifest later can be thought of as daughters of ego, like Rukmavati, the daughter of Rukmi. The marriage of Aniruddha and Rochna. Aniruddha represents the manas or the conscious mind, and Rochna literally means that which gives delight. Ruchi comes meaning delightful, so Rochna comes from that root. As the conscious mind becomes purified, its association with the senses gives a higher form of delight. This delight arises from the awareness that mind is no longer under the control of the senses, that it cannot be led astray by the senses or distracted from the divine communion. And we will cover the slaying of Rukmi in tomorrow's satsang. This is Swami Nikhilanand. Om Tat Sat.